Welcome to Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the evolving world of sports science. I'm Andrew Rizza, an athlete trainer with decades of experience in professional, collegiate, and high school sports.
And I'm Cameron Roth, an orthopedic surgeon and a consultant for the Chicago White Sox.
In each episode, we'll explore the real-world challenges and opportunities facing today's human performance professionals.
Our hands-on experience is transforming sports medicine and breaking barriers through innovation and teamwork.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast. This week, we have Ted Johnson, former NFL linebacker and three-time world champion for the New England Patriots. Ted played from 1995 to 2004, and now he is the co-host of WEI Afternoons with Andy Hart and Nick Stevens. Ted, welcome to the show.
What's up, gentlemen? Good to be with you guys today.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks.
You bet.
You know, Ted, we had met, it must have been back in like 2008 or 9, where Weston High School, Bob DeSanya's asked you to come on and help coach. And that's the first time I met you. You kind of came in the training room and you're like, Riz, I always liked being in the training room. It felt like a safe space for me. And
I enjoyed volunteering that year. I had a really good time with the kids. And it was, of course, you're right, great to meet you. And I always did. There's something, maybe it's because I spend so much time in the damn training room that you really get to know your trainers and have cultivate good relationships with those guys. So I always enjoyed the time that I spent in those rooms for sure.
Now, when I met you, I mean, you were kind of right. I think just retired a year or two outside of the NFL. How do you look better than you did back then? I mean, you look amazing. I saw you at last time at Weston. You shook my hand and almost broke it. So, I mean, what are you doing to try to keep yourself in shape and working on health?
You know, guys, it's a lifestyle choice for me. It really is. I got into weightlifting and exercise at a very young age. I turned myself into a football player when I was back in high school. I loved it then. I just enjoy being in a weight room. It's where a lot of my best thinking happens. That's where I'm the happiest a lot of times is in the weight room. And it's just kind of part of my identity. It's a lifestyle choice. And it's also part of my plan to stay on the straight and narrow. It's kind of it's my salvation in a lot of ways. You know, had the issues in the past. You know, people, if you know my story, you know that I've struggled with addiction issues, and so the working out and the exercise combats those issues that I used to struggle with. And so I try to live a diligent life and take care of myself. And it's a shame a lot of guys that play the game. You know, we were required to keep our bodies. You know, our bodies were our assets, and that's how we made our money, by taking care of them. And a lot of guys, they want nothing to do with the weight room after they're done. So me, it's just who I am. It's part of my persona. And so I appreciate you saying that, Riz. And people, when they see me, they say, "Look, you look like you can still play." That's the best compliment you can give me, because that's the image I'm trying to project. I wouldn't last, a series, but I do. The physical conditioning is really fines tuned the mental side of my life, which is obviously very important.
So in the same vein, obviously you have these preparation habits that keep you healthy now and keep you in great shape and moving forward for quality of life. But did you have preparation habits that helped you succeed early in your NFL career and then allow you to last for 10 years at such a high level?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The main thing really is just discipline, having a disciplined mindset and a professional mindset, in the sense that you have to have intent every day when you're at the highest level. And even when you're trying to get to the highest level, the high school to college, that's big time college football. I was fortunate enough to get recruited by Colorado. And I learned at a young age that consistency, showing up, discipline, is more important than motivation. A lot of people are motivated but don't have the discipline. It's really the grind every single day, working away, chipping away, whether that be from a physical standpoint, getting your body in the best condition it can be, or mentally on the mental side. But it's really every single day attacking your job with intent to get better and to have that professional mindset. You had to learn that early on, and you saw the guys that didn't have that didn't last very, very long in the league. And so it's a sing for your supper kind of league, at the highest levels. There's just a small percentage of guys that can roll out of bed and perform without really trying. I mean, there's some guys that have just got God-given ability where they can do that. Most guys like myself had to work at it every single day with intent if you were going to survive and maintain a longer career. So that was it. It was just discipline and consistency and it with intent every single day. And that's what kept me in the league as long as I was.
And now that you're in sports media and you interact with athletes in a different fashion, do you think that those preparation habits have changed over the past 20 years for the players that are in now as opposed to when you were a player in the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, I think so. And I think really it's really just having an understanding of how to really take care of yourself. I mean, there's just more information about the benefits of sleep. There's just more information about the benefits of a healthy diet and what a healthy diet looks like. Training techniques have been more finely tuned now than they ever have. When I played, gosh, I mean, I've been out of the game for 20 years, but it was kind of an archaic way of training, practicing, approach. The way we approached the game of football it really wasn't that different in high school than it was when I got in the NFL as far as training techniques and attitudes. It was I had 2 days in high school, I had 2 days in college, I had 2 days in the pros. We power cleaned in high school, I power cleaned in college, I power cleaned in the pros. I would be shocked if I saw anybody in the pros power cleaning anymore, right? Or the days of 2 days are long gone. They don't hit nearly as much. And there is, my background with head trauma and my issues with concussions. And so I think the sport is better for it. I just think to answer you, really to kind of sum up what you're asking is there's just people are smarter about how they prepare when it comes to diet, when it comes to sleep, when it comes to training now more than they ever were when I was playing. Everybody was afraid to try something different or do anything different back then. And so they kind of just went with the status quo. And I would train a lot differently now if I was entering the NFL as opposed to when I entered the NFL 30 years ago.
No, that makes sense.
So Ted, what are some of the things that help separate, being a good linebacker from a great one?
You have to have unwavering confidence in your abilities. That is the first and foremost. You better believe that you deserve to be at that level, that you are worthy of that opportunity. You have to have that self-belief if you're going to make it. It is a job that every single day you're going to be challenged. It's fight or flight every single day. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. And so the guy across from you, you have to assume he's going to bring it because it's your professional livelihood on the line every single day. And the way contracts are worked in the NFL, you are constantly singing for your supper. There is no guarantee you're going to have a job, week to week. And so that dynamic, the guys that have the staying power and the fortitude and the self-belief will stick around. You also have to be very good at letting go of mistakes. They get paid too. You're not going to win every single battle, every matchup. The goal is to win more than they do. But when you have a bad play, you better forget it and move on. A lot of guys have a difficult time doing that. The guys that stay around in the league the longest are the ones that can put their mistakes behind. But it's just really, you can have a ton of self-belief and maybe not have the talent, but a bare minimum to make it at that league is to at least have undeniable belief that you are worthy of that position and that opportunity. Because if you don't have that, you won't last very long. It's a dog eat dog kind of work environment every single day at those higher levels. And so that's something you learn if you play even college football at a higher level. It's just you realize every single day you got to bring a mindset that you're not giving up your position and no one's beating you out that day. And that's kind of how you survive in that league.
When we talked to Rob Ninkovich, who's also a two-time Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots, he talked about that because he was a lower draft pick out of Purdue, and he would see the higher draft picks come into the locker room every year, and he would be able to see immediately who he was going to actually have to compete with versus who he knew he would take over. I mean, he sustained injuries early in his career with two other teams, and then he really made his bones with the Patriots just by exactly what you said, complete confidence and dedication to his craft.
Yeah, no. Sneak was a hell of a player. Gosh, I think he played 11 years. I mean, that's a hell of a career, and was just a very, very all around really good good player, a smart player. I'm a big fan of Meeks, but it's crazy. Like there's two ways to keep a job in the NFL. And I've always liked the way this has been explained to me. You're either pretty good at a few things or you dominate at one thing. And so if you don't dominate at one thing, you better make yourself useful. You better find ways to feel valuable, and where they can use you in multiple ways. It goes in anything in life. Is you need to be able to show the team that you can do a lot of things so that they have a very difficult time letting you go. I was in the bucket of kind of dominated at one thing. My forte was stopping the run, diagnosing run plays, getting guys lined up, calling up plays. But it was really more of I was more of a kind of a one-trick pony to some degree, but I was the best at it. And so that's what kept me, in the job as long as I did. And, you find what you're good at and you lean into it. For me, it was downhill play. It was physical play. I survived for a long time off of a technique I was taught in college called the stun and separate technique. It's a technique where so a middle linebacker, he's lined up off the line of scrimmage, and he has to take on guards, fullbacks, tackles, guys that weigh 50 to 100 pounds more than you. And so how do you defeat those blocks, disengage the block, and then go make the play? Well, you better bring a punch to the moment of impact so that you stun that player so that you can get your hands inside of their breastplate, get control of them, disengage, and go make the play. Otherwise, once those guys get their hands on you, it's over. But if you stun them, it gives you a split second to get your hands into so that you control the blocker, that you can go make the play. And that was I've done that. I've repped that play thousands and thousands of times, and it was the reason I played in the league as long as I did, because I was very good at that stun and separate technique. So I realized early on in college what I was really good at and leaned into it, and it got me a 10-year career.
We know that performance is one way to stay in the NFL. Now, how do injuries play a role? We know injuries are a big thing in pro sports, in NFL specifically, because I remember speaking to a friend of the podcast and mentor to me and someone I've worked side by side with for almost 25 years, Dr. Thomas Gill, and he equated it to a car wreck every single play on an NFL field.
Yeah.
And middle linebacker is one of those positions, right? So how did you lean on the athletic training and medical staff to keep you healthy, and specifically working with, the physicians that you did over your tenure with the Patriots?
Yeah, I learned early on that the nature of my position, my job was to initiate contact on every play. It wasn't to avoid contact. Not every position in football is created equal, right? It's just there's a different mindset on defense than there is on offense. There's a different mindset from D-line than there is to linebacker. So every position requires a different mindset, different abilities, different skill set. But the position I played is just naturally one where there is high impact collisions over and over and over again. So, and your body gets contorted in ways that it's not meant to be contorted in. And so I realized I was going to spend time in the training room with, I don't know, my thumb getting jammed, my ankle getting twisted. I've had 2 Bankart surgeries. I've had screws in my foot. I've had torn biceps. So, the position is it's a physical position. And so I spent a lot of time in training rooms, get to know those guys. And that was important for me to cultivate good relationships with them and I always put faith in my trainers. You want your trainers to have your best interests in mind. And if you have a relationship with them more than a surface kind of just the cursory, hello, how you doing? If you have a little bit more of a relationship, I just think that's important to have that, because you guys are there before we get there and you're there after we get there. And so the players that respect, your profession and what you guys do, I think you get that in return 10 times over. So I just always thought it was important to have good relationships with my trainers and my doctors.
When did you start thinking about brain health? So we interviewed Dr. Adam White, who's the head of brain health at Professional Footballers Association and works with BU and the Brain Bank. When did you personally start thinking about your brain health and long-term mental status?
So that was, if you know my story, if you're interested in just hearing a fraction of the story, you just Google my name and concussions and New York Times 2007, and it'll pop up, or just my name and concussions, and you will You will see that in the summer of 2002, I got 2 back-to-back concussions within a 4-day span. And that's what led to a lot of my problems later on, at least initially after I left football. And I didn't know anything about post-concussion syndrome, traumatic brain injury. Didn't know, obviously, CTE had not been discovered until 2006, and I retired in 2005. So that wasn't even something I could learn about while I was playing the game. So there wasn't a lot of information about head trauma, multiple concussions, the subconcussive hits that can lead to problems down the road, second impact syndrome. Those terms were not being batted around in the NFL locker rooms. Now, the terms that we used back then that I don't hear nearly as much anymore is, boy, you got your bell rung, or you got dinged in the head. Those are 2 very much common phrases that were used back then. But no one said, okay, well, what if you get a lot of those? What happens? Nobody was going a step further. I mean, I'll never forget, back in the late 80s, early 90s, you'd be watching the Dallas Cowboys game and they go, boy, that's Troy Aikman's 7th concussion. He better be careful. Or what? There was never a follow-up, Same thing with Steve Young. Oh, that's his 8th concussion. He better be careful. Or what? Now I can't imagine a broadcaster saying, okay, that's Drake May's 8th concussion. He better be careful because he might have long-term, cognitive, deficiencies later on in life. That I can't imagine that ever happened. I mean, so we've come a long way, but really where I really started digging into it is right when I retired. I retired because my head hurt. I got those 2 concussions back to back in a 4-day span in the summer of 2002. And then I got them the rest of that 2002 season. To start training camp in 2003, the first hit in training camp in 2003, I got concussed. That feeling where you hit and everything slows down and you just kind of, your equilibrium's off. You get this warm kind of feeling that comes over you. Everybody's walking by real slow. Your vision's a little blurred. And then slowly it starts to pick back up, and then it gets back to kind of your normal cognitive state. And once I got that first hit in the training camp in 2003, I got him the rest of that season. And then the start of training camp 2004, guess what? The first hit, same feeling. Everything slows down. I get that warm feeling. Vision's blurred. But what was happening is those episodes those events were lasting longer and longer. So it might have lasted 5 to 10 seconds the first time. The more I was getting, it was lasting 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So it was a longer duration as these subconcussive hits started adding up. So I remember really thinking about it after we beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl 2004, 2005 season, of maybe, shutting it down, only because my head hurt and I felt like something was wrong. My personality was changing. I could tell I didn't have the same cognitive horsepower that I used to have, and that something was wrong, even though there was really not a name to put with what I was dealing with at the time. And so the first day of training camp of 2005, I decided to retire. And I went and I told Belichick the first day of training camp 2005 that I was retiring because of my head stuff. And because I knew that first hit in training camp in 2005 would be like the first hit in 2003, it would be like the first hit in 2004. And so I retired just because it felt like if I kept playing, I would be doing damage that I didn't know if I could, recover from. And so that's why I shut it down. And then from that point on, that's when I went into hyperdrive to learn everything I could about multiple concussions, subconcussive hits, the long-term ramifications of getting head trauma by playing the game of football.
I think it goes back to when I think it was the concussion symposium at Children's Hospital Boston that you had actually spoke at post-retirement. And you had mentioned there was one thing that kind of stuck with me, and I've used this discussing head injury with young athletes over my career, is that you had made a comment that you were the captain, so you were taking calls from the sidelines. And there was a time where you looked over the sideline, you couldn't see the call, and Brewski, correct me if I'm wrong, would give you the call. So you didn't have to come out of the game.
So I would be in the front and they would signal that. So they didn't have the microphones in the helmets.
Yeah.
So it was all signals from the sideline. And when I would get that, my vision would blur. I couldn't see the signals. So I'd had to have Brewski call the play, and I'd get behind the huddle. He'd come to the front of the huddle, call the play because I couldn't see the call. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And do you think that, since then, I mean, the way that head injury was handled when you were in the NFL compared to now is like night and day, right? So we see that the spotters now that are in the booths, there's concussion protocol that you see an athlete that may have sustained an injury, they call down to the sideline, they remove that player from the sideline. What was the protocol when you were in the, was there one, or was there something that there was between the players like Teddy and you or other players to say, hey, you know, Ted's got to kind of stay on the field to help us?
It was ignorance was bliss. It wasn't a topic that anybody wanted to approach or really dig into or talk about. You know, it goes back to that confidence thing I told you, or we talked about earlier in the program, where if you feel as if something's off or that you're not 100%, you will lose your edge. And so a lot of guys just pushed it to the side and didn't want to acknowledge it, didn't want to address it. Nobody talked about that stuff when I played. It just wasn't. It was much more archaic and just not in a work environment where that stuff was talked about. So, and I'll be honest, a lot of us didn't know much about it to even really talk about it. I mean, you think about it, you know, guys ramming heads.
Yeah,
it would make sense that there would be some physical, you know, and cognitive ramifications for that. Yet, no one ever put two and two together until Dr. Amalu, you know, did the autopsy on those brains, you know, early on, and realized that there is a link to these concussions and long-term health. So it just, in my era of football, nobody addressed it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to give any weight to it because, I'll be honest, you just thought that's just comes with the territory. You didn't know any better. So you just kept playing through it and dealt with the symptoms as they came.
And do you think that it was more or less, if you had to say, was it more education based, or was it more you didn't want it to be a sign of weakness for you as a player and to people to look at you and say, oh, Ted's just soft, right? Yeah. You think it was more of the education, or you think it was more of the being more of like a gladiator on the field?
It's the latter. It's not even a question. It is definitely the latter. That was the mindset. And I always say this about head trauma, and this is why it was very difficult to step out and say something. And this is why I sometimes would disappoint me that there's a lot of high profile names that had high profile cases with concussions that won't talk about it, because I think they could really help guys. There's shame around it because it's the invisible injury. You can't see it. You know, I can see a broken leg. I can see what a jacked up shoulder looks like. It's in a sling. You're in a walking boot. You're on crutches. Oh, clearly he's some concussion. Nobody could see that there's damage inside. And so you're afraid to say anything because guys will be like, yeah, whatever, dude. I don't believe you. You know, you look fine to me. That's the key thing with that issue is it's shame based because you can't see the injury like you can typical injuries. And so guys were reluctant to say anything. I think it's gotten a lot better now. I think the thing that makes it better now more than anything is just the not as much hitting. You know, look, I know you got to hit to play football, but it's kind of like, if you think of it in these terms, you know, it's like, you know, the odometer in a car. You know, the more miles, obviously, the more wear and tear, the less of the value of the car, right? So it's kind of like, do you need, you know, 4 days of 2 days in a row, 4 days in a row of 2 days like they used to do, or just it was just way too much. And so they really scaled back on the hitting. So less miles on the odometer, I think, inherently makes playing football safer because they're not hitting nearly as much. The product might not be as good, but I think it's worth it in the long run.
Did you have any overlap with Junior Seau, who's a Hall of Fame NFL linebacker for the Chargers, the Patriots, and the Dolphins, who tragically committed suicide and then posthumously was known to have CTE? What were your interactions with him, or any thoughts?
Junior was my favorite player. Junior is from my rival high school. He went to Oceanside High School. I went to Carlsbad High School. They're towns that butt up against each other in Southern California. Junior is 5 years older than me. He went to USC. And then he got drafted by the Chargers. So he's a god I grew up in two places, Houston, Texas, but I went to high school out in San Diego, just north of San Diego in Carlsbad. And he was a god during that time at SC, at Oceanside, and then, of course, with the Chargers. I love Junior. Junior thanked me for coming out and talking about my struggles with concussions. And it's one of the saddest stories. If you've ever met Junior, he's got an energy that is unlike anybody I've ever seen. He played the game in a way I've never seen a middle linebacker play. He's got more energy and enthusiasm and just natural ability as much as anybody I've ever seen. But he was, like a lot of guys, suffering in silence, and he didn't want to ask for help. In that community, the Samoan community in San Diego is a very big community. They're very tight, and he's a god there, and people relied on him just for so many things. And I just feel like he just didn't, have the ability to ask for help and get the help he needed. And it was just Junior Seau's suicide was, I think, a big watershed moment for this cause and for this issue. I think a lot of people saw that and went, oh, okay. I mean, there's different tipping points, but the biggest tipping point was that when somebody of that caliber did what he did, and really, unless you were really close to him, I don't think there were any outward signs that he was struggling like he was. It's just one of the more tragic things you'll ever hear is a guy with that kind of passion and love of people and energy was just at a point where he didn't know what else to do. And that was kind of the sad part, where guys didn't know. I mean, I would go to doctors, you guys, at the time after I retired, and I'd tell them my symptoms and I'd tell them how I get them, and they didn't know what to do. And if I can give you a quick little story to kind of highlight how scary it was for guys initially dealing with these issues, is I went to a very famous doctor in the Boston area. He's a psychiatrist, and he was prescribing meds, and they weren't working. And it was for depression. And he got to a point in which he says to me, Ted, I think you should try ECT. I said, what's that? He goes, that's electric shock therapy. Okay. I've seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I've heard about it. He says there's an 80% success rate, and you got to go for months, and you got to go 4 days, and someone's got to drive you there. And it's like this whole thing. And I went and I toured the facility, and I was just like, wow, this is really. And I called another friend who was, a guy that knows a lot about concussions, and asked his opinion on it. And he's like, why don't you go see my neurosurgeon and get his opinion? So I went and saw this other doctor who's the expert in his field, but in a different field. And he says, if you do that, Ted, if you do ECT, it's like getting concussed over and over and over again. So two guys that were considered the best in their fields, doctors in different fields, had completely different ways of going about to fix the same problem. And that scared the hell out of me. The one doctor, and I thanked him for this, it was the doctor that looked at me and he said, Ted, I don't know what to do with you, man. He goes, this is uncharted territory, and so I'm going to consult with some other guys, but I really don't know. I said, Doc, thanks for just being honest, and that was where I was, Junior was, and I think a lot of guys at that time were. And it was a scarier time because there were just no answers. And I'm not saying there is now. There's no clear kind of, hey, do this and this will take care of it. But I think we know a hell of a lot more now than we ever did. But still, if you think about it, 2006, 20 years ago, that's not that long ago. This is still kind of new research territory for researchers and doctors in the field of concussion study.
We recently interviewed Isaiah Kazavinsky, a friend of mine that I met through another colleague, and I know he's a friend of yours. We interviewed him at the Harvard Varsity Club, and we were talking about the same topic about head injury in the NFL and how he managed his head injuries. And he had mentioned that Chris Nowinski was his roommate in college, who was the founder of the Concussion Legacy Foundation and works at BU Medical or BU Brain Bank. And he had told the story that Chris had asked him to be, to donate his brain post-mortem. He said, absolutely, I'll do it. And he's like, and then he calls him and says, you know what? I'm going to make you patient 1A because Ted wants to donate his brain. So he's going to be patient 1 because it's better for our marketing kind of thing, joke. Was it at that point with this stuff that happened with Junior and was going on with you and with the medical professionals that you had met that you made the decision to do this for the future of the NFL or future of the study of the brain and to make this more of an awareness and a public awareness to people that are suffering from this? When did you make that decision and for what reason?
I made it rather quickly. It was soon after I went public with my story about what happened in the summer 2002 to the New York Times. when that came out in 2007, that story about what happened 5 years earlier, I was kind of pot committed to the cause to some degree, right? And so I put myself out there, and I wanted to do my part. I kind of wanted to jumpstart the dialogue and the discussion, and I did by just doing that article. It brought the issue to the forefront. It made the commissioner was asked about it at the Super Bowl that year. That story came out the Friday before the Super Bowl in 2007, and it led to concussion symposiums for the first time, and due to regulations and new stop gaps to help prevent something that happened to me to players down the road. But when Chris approached me about doing that, it was, for me, it was like, yeah, of course. But really, like I said, they're so new into researching this issue. And because it's only post-mortem, they need data and they need more brains to study, because we're at the beginning of this. And so it was a natural thing for me to agree to do that and to do my part. Now I've pulled back a little bit. I'm happy to talk about this issue. I'm very passionate about it, but I feel like, when I tell that story, there is some drawbacks to it. I know I'm helping a lot of guys that need help, that are suffering just like I was. But, the NFL doesn't like me talking about it. The Patriots don't like me talking about it. And so it's strained a lot of relationships that I used to have really good relationships with the folks there in Foxborough. I was very close to the Crafts. I was in, man. And now after that story, unfortunately, you're kind of on the outside looking in. And so I burned a lot of bridges by being open and honest about that. And that's the unfortunate thing. I would do it all over again, because I know I've helped a lot of guys, and just even Junior Seau telling me that he appreciates me stepping out and saying something. That made it worth it, just by him telling me that alone. So no regrets when it comes to that. But it's something I'm very, very passionate about. I think at this point, guys are armed with information. They know, they make educated decisions now, where we didn't have that choice back then. The information was not given to us. It was hidden from us. It's not now. It's out there. So guys can make the right decisions. And a lot of guys, you're going to see, the money's so great now, you guys, you're going to see guys playing shorter and shorter. You're not going to see guys playing as long as we used to play, because the money's so good and the information is out there now, and when it wasn't. And so guys are going to have shorter careers. Luke Kuechly, for instance, great linebacker, played 8 years. He could have kept playing, but I think he was taken care of. There's a lot of examples like that of guys that retire way before you think they would. And I guarantee you a lot of it is because of the head trauma and the information out there, and the potential pitfalls of what could happen down the road if you continue to play and collect those hits to the head.
I have to say that I appreciate you and what you did for players and for medical staffs, because for us, it made our lives a lot easier after you had come out and mentioned your story and your history of concussion. It helped us write the protocol for the state of Massachusetts. It helped to pass legislation. It helps to get more buy-in from our athletes when we're dealing with them. They are now more forthcoming when they are having something that is going wrong with them. And a lot of the medical staffs we work with now are amazing on how we deal with things. So I do appreciate everything you did. And I know some people resent that, but I 100%, without you, we would still be probably climbing that uphill battle. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Riz. It was my pleasure. And that makes me feel really good. And I appreciate you saying that. And it's amazing how it trickled. I thought it trickled down to the lower levels really fast. There's still some things to work out. I know every school sometimes can't afford a trainer, which is crazy, but I just think parents are more informed. I think kids are more informed. They're not afraid to say something. And, I'm just glad that I had more of an impact, I think, in a more meaningful cause post-career than I did when I played football. And for that makes me feel very good. So thank you for saying that, Riz.
Yeah, you're very welcome. For sake of time, I know you're a busy guy. We have a lightning round. We love to do these quick hit answers. So here we go. Lightning round number one.
Hit him, Riz.
Bring it.
Hardest player you ever faced in the NFL?
Terrell Davis. I mean, it's say, as far as running backs, he was the toughest cover. He was the toughest guy to get down. You hit him, and he fall for 2 yards. So there's a big difference between 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 6. Yes, Terrell Davis is, and then I'd say him and Larry Allen. Larry Allen, R.I.P. Larry Allen, considered maybe the top 2, maybe 3 guards of all time. Larry Allen, Terrell Davis, the two toughest guys. And then that old Peyton Manning was pretty tough too when I had to go against him.
Peyton. Omaha.
Omaha.
Two-part question. Best linebacker. It can be the same answer. Best linebacker since you retired and the best linebacker today.
Ooh, best linebacker since I retired. Probably, I think Luke was up there. Luke Kuechly was up there. Fred Warner, I think, is probably the best today. But after me, I would say Luke. And then I'd also, he played in my era. I was the biggest Zach Thomas fan, huge Zach Thomas fan. He got in the Hall of Fame finally. But those were studs right there, man. Those guys, and Fred Warner is probably the best middle linebacker playing today.
One rule that you would change in the NFL.
Oh, I would allow you can challenge any call on the field. That's what I would do. I think you should be able, if there's a penalty and you're questioning it, I think you should be able to question every penalty like to a certain point. So not you only get so many challenges you get, but I think I just think some of the ticky tack stuff that's called is too much. So I would change that. I would make every penalty challengeable.
Especially pass interference and especially defensive holding on 3rd and 17. That gives you an automatic first down.
Can I do another one too? And this, you can't hit a guy 5 yards down the field. Like, are you kidding me? You can't put your hand on a guy. Like, I'm not saying hold him, but like contact.
You can pop him. Yeah,
you should be able to pop him past 5 yards. So that was the Colts. They didn't like us in 2004 being so physical with their guys.
Right.
But those would be two things I would want to change.
Okay.
What's a myth about an NFL locker room?
Ooh, myth. Boy, there's a lot of the myths are kind of true, man, from being honest.
So they're not myths, they're facts.
Yeah, they're facts. Yeah, man. That's a good question.
Or something that some people don't know about an NFL locker room.
Well, NFL locker room is unlike any work environment ever. I will say that. It is. It's definitely kill or be killed in there. So you better be tough. Verbal jousting. You better not back and be.
Yeah.
You got to have thick skin. I would say what I love about football is that it's such a unique work environment in the sense that football is the most interdependent sport there is, meaning I need someone else to do his job for me to do mine. It's not like that in baseball. It's just you and that pitcher. You don't need somebody else to do their job to make a hit. Golf, you don't need somebody else. Football, if my nose tackle doesn't keep the center off me, I can't scrape over and make the play. If I don't reroute that tight end and cover 2 down the middle of the field, then Rodney Harrison can't do his job. So there is a bond and a connectedness and a camaraderie that goes on in a locker room that is unique to any place else. And when you get guys that really enjoy each other and know each other as human beings, you're going to play just a little bit harder for them. And so that's where the magic comes. So a really close, tight-knit locker room usually will lead to more wins and a more successful football team.
Right. I have one final question. What was your favorite Patriot team you played for? What year?
Man, I love that 04 team. The 04 team was pretty awesome. I love that 96 team when we went to the Super Bowl. We lost. But that 96 team and that 04 team were probably my favorite teams. That 04 team was a wagon. That defense, we had studs at every level. We've been playing together for a while. We've been in Belichick's system for enough years that we kind of knew that system in and out. And we knew we were good. And we just were so superiorly confident in our abilities. And so that 04 team to me was one of the more special teams I've ever played on.
Great answer.
Ted, we really appreciate your time. This has been awesome. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you. So I grew up watching you. I grew up playing Madden, and I would play as the Patriots, and I would use you, and I would rush the A gap on every play and use the hip.
Yes.
And your shoulder pads in Madden were about twice the size of everyone else's shoulder pads.
and not just in Madden, in the real game.
In real life.
It was.
I had a franchise one year, and you were actually defensive MVP because you had the most tackles and sacks because I played with you every single play.
I love it. I love it, bud. Thank you. And I'm honored that you would tell me that story. And the funny thing is if they were going to blitz me, it was going to be up the A gap because I was a straight line player. And whenever we play against quarterbacks that were immobile, like Dan Marino, I have my most sacks against Dan Marino because he never moved anywhere other than 5 yards behind the center. So they blitzed me up the A gap, and that's where I got most of my sacks was against him. So that's a great story. I love that. And the shoulder pads. You know how many people talk to me about my shoulder pads? And it's funny. I look at old film and I go, holy! I mean, they were huge. So great stuff. John Madden. I got to meet him at the Super Bowl in '96. What a charming guy he was. I can't wait for the new movie that's coming out. That's going to be a lot of fun. But I appreciate you sharing that story with me. That's awesome.
No worries, Ted. That's awesome. Thanks.
Hey, Ted, listen, I appreciate this. I know we've been trying to do this for a little while now. Hopefully we can continue their conversations. I mean, we could talk about mental health and head trauma for days.
We could.
You know, I'd love to catch up with you off camera. Thank you for your friendship and your willingness to come on. It was great having you here. We do appreciate it.
Boys, it was my pleasure. Thank you. And it was a pleasure being here. And hopefully some people learned some things. And you ever need me, you know where to find me, guys. All right?
Thanks, Ted.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast. Follow us on social media and check out our website.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult a licensed healthcare provider for guidance related to your specific situation. We'll see you next week.